Mario Cristobal's future at Miami. Now, he is not going anywhere. There's no reports of this, but I want to discuss what does this look like going forward. The loss to SMU is not great, and it's their second loss of the season, and yet another reminder of Mario Cristobal's failings in games. And this was another double-digit favorite team that falls short against an underdog. And the one thing we talk about with Mario Cristobal is his recruiting, right? And it's very obvious that he works very hard to get the classes that he brings in, but the talent level he brings in is not reaching their potential. They're not reaching their ceiling. They're coming up short. And I think it's fair for Miami fans to ask the question, well, if we can't win last year with that roster that they had, and even this year, there's still plenty of talent on this roster. If we can't win and make the playoff with that, what are we doing? And I think that's a fair question. Now, the hard part with that is, where does the fault lie? Obviously, there's a lot of fault to go to Mario Cristobal, and there's plenty of blame to be thrown around. However, I really like the hires that he made. So it's not that there's a lack of awareness of what he needs to do at the coordinator positions. I just don't think that his teams live up to expectations. And I don't know if there's a easy solution to fix that, because you hired Shannon Dawson. Shannon Dawson is one of the better coordinators, the offensive coordinators in college football. What he did with Cam Ward, what he's done with Carson Beck, there are good things with that. And I think that if you want to look at something that we looked at coming into the year, it was the offense and the potential for a step back. Because when you lose the talent that they had, they lost multiple NFL wide receivers. They lost Isaiah Horton to the transfer portal. You lost a ton of talent, and you also lost your star quarterback. Now, Carson Beck was never going to be Cam Ward. However, there were still expectations that this team was going to be good. And maybe this is the year where we just put too high of expectations on Miami. However, I think that there is plenty of blame to still be thrown around despite them not meeting those expectations that maybe were a little bit too lofty. But you had plenty of new talent. CJ Daniels coming in, Malachi Tony is a freshman. Even though those guys are talented and leading the way, it's clear that they're not at the level of the wide receiver talent. He would definitely play in that group last year and have a ton of success. And it's clear that Shannon Dawson knows how to get them involved. I think you can put some blame on Carson Beck. There are times where it feels like when Carson Beck has no pressure on him, it's beginning of the game or early in the game, he has no problem making the right throws, making the right decisions, and being able to find his guys downfield. But when the pressure is on, when he has to make a throw, it's very obvious the decision making is kind of going out the window. He's making poor decisions, and we saw that against SMU. When the game was tight, Carson Beck was not at his best. And if it's not schemed up for guys to be wide open, the likelihood that he's going to make a mistake, unfortunately, is getting higher and higher. And that's disappointing because this is a very talented quarterback. And this is a passing attack that can still do a lot of good things. So again, back to Cristobal, it's not that he made the wrong hire at offensive coordinator. Shannon Dawson is a very good offensive coordinator. The same can be said for Corey Heatherman. Last year, their shortcomings can be placed solely on the defensive struggles. That's probably what kept them out of the college football playoff. So they go out and they bring in Corey Heatherman to fix the defense. The defense is playing lights out at times. The defense is playing with a ton of talent, and you have guys like Ruben Bain that are going to have a bright future in the NFL. You have a group that's playing with confidence. And even in this game, they only give up 20 points in regulation. They give up a touchdown, obviously, which was the game winner to SMU, but this is still a very good defense. This is still a very good unit that knows what they're doing and knows how to stop opposing offenses. So you can't really blame Cristobal for making the wrong hires. I think that he made the right hires. It's just that part of it might be that we raised expectations a little bit too much. And the one thing I think you can maybe point out to that being their biggest problem is the motivation. This is a conference in the ACC that has tanked in the last couple of years. So when you are a good team trying to make the playoff in a conference like this, where the competition is maybe not as good as it used to be, you have to find internal motivation to be able to compete in these games and be able to dominate in these games. And it's clear that Miami just doesn't have it. Miami just doesn't have that killer instinct in a way where you expect them to just handle their business and be able to do things that really good teams do, which is win football games in tough situations. And I think that the SMU game is a good example of, if you are not ready, a team like SMU, who's not having their best year, is very capable of beating you. And the thing with this is, it's kind of a recent trend where we've seen really the entire year. You started the year out with a good win over Notre Dame. But the one thing after that I kept noting is that this is a team that has lapses in intensity. This is a team that is a very good team that is not living up to its potential because they have stretches in games where the other team just keeps it close or pulls closer. And you saw that in multiple games. Obviously, Bethune-Cookman and USF didn't really have a concern there. But the Florida game, mental mistakes, poor decisions, the lapses in intensity of that killer instinct, that you saw it there. Florida State, the fourth quarter, did it ever feel like Florida State was going to win that game? No, but there was definitely lapses where they were not playing to their potential. The Louisville game, another example, and Louisville found a way to win that. The Stanford game early on, there were stretches where it was just tough for them to get going. And then even in the SMU game, Beck throws 2 picks, and there are times where mental mistakes are costing them games. And so for Mario Cristobal, that's on you. You have to motivate them. You have to find ways to get your team to play, because this is a Miami team that its fan base wants them to get back to the early 2000s, the 80s. They want this program to be a team that just goes in, kicks down the doors, and comes away with a big win. They expect that. And this is a team that has the talent to do it. And I don't necessarily know how they're going to, they're probably not making the playoff at this point. And so then if you're a Miami fan, what are you asking of Mario Cristobal going forward? What are your expectations? Because right now, this is a guy who he's making mistakes in game. He's making poor decisions. His teams have lapses in intensity. And while it's great that you can recruit at a high level, I don't think that that's going to win over fans long term. And maybe, there are people who report that Mario Cristobal is very hard on his assistants. He expects a lot from them, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But is there a question of these guys are getting burnt out to the point where they're putting so much energy and effort into most of the year that there are going to be lapses like this because their brains and they just don't have the capacity to be on all the time? I don't know if that's something he has to change, if there are things that he needs to adjust, but it's clear that something is going wrong year in and year out. This team should never lose to a team like Louisville and a team like SMU that we just saw. Don't get me wrong, SMU is better than I think people realize, but you should not be losing those games. Last year, you should not be losing to Georgia Tech. You should not be losing to Syracuse. And even though it was a bowl game, you shouldn't be losing to Iowa State. You just shouldn't. If you are as good as Mario Cristobal gives them a chance to be, you should not be losing these games. You should be dominating the ACC, especially with the door being wide open. That is a big question for me. That's a big concern. And I don't know if they have the ability to turn that around. That's a big question for me. And I'm not necessarily sure how you fix that, but I know that there are concerns. There are things that could be changed. It's just a matter of, are they going to be able to do that or not?